Hello, teachers. My name is Leah Atnett, and I am the Outreach and Professional Development Coordinator for History Day here in Maryland. This webinar is called Understanding History Day. I'll talk a little bit about what History Day is. I'll explain the project process from the teacher's point of view, and I'll give you some tips for getting started. Whether you are a returning History Day teacher, brand new to the program, or just curious about what it is, I'm glad you decided to join me today. I'll start out with a very brief description of what History Day is. The simplest way to describe it is a long-term history research project for middle and high school students. History Day is a curriculum that is used nationally and even internationally, which is why you might also hear it called National History Day or NHD. One thing that makes it unique as a research project is that students can choose one of 5 creative formats to present their research: exhibit, website, documentary, performance, or research paper. Some of these formats are more visual, some are more tech-based, and some are low-tech, so there's something to appeal to all different types of learners and personal interests. Finally, the project culminates in contests at the school, district, state, and national level. This can be a great motivator for some, but your primary duty will be to help all students develop their research and historical thinking skills, whether or not they're contest bound. Here's a little bit about what the process will look like for your students. It's paced out over several months so students don't feel too overwhelmed thinking about the project as a whole. Students will start by choosing a narrow, manageable project topic. They will do research using primary and secondary sources. They'll write a thesis that comments on the significance of their topic, write the text, and then design and create the project in one of the 5 formats from the last slide. Steps 1 through 4 will look the same for all of your students, no matter what format they choose, but in the last stage, their task lists will start to look different. Now that you know the very basics, I want to tell you why we like History Day. History Day is an example of project-based learning. It's student-led and student-centered. It gives them the agency to pick their own topic, what they want to say about it, and mode of expression, which motivates students throughout the process. It helps students develop not just historical thinking skills, but also the broader 21st century skills that will help them succeed in any subject or career. Students will learn time and task management, as much of the project will typically be done outside the classroom. History Day gives opportunities for students to share their work through school-level showcases and classroom presentations, which allows students to take pride in the work that they've done. And they're given a chance to self-reflect in a 1-page process paper. And finally, we believe that project-based learning and History Day are not just for your honors students or private schools or special programs. All students can benefit from the skills that they learn through this project. History Day also fits in perfectly with the recently updated MSDE social studies frameworks and can help your student develop and exercise the skills that will be measured in the MCAP assessments in 8th grade and through the EBUS assessments in high school. History Day is inquiry-based and follows the inquiry arc. Students start with research questions about their topic that they will investigate and present conclusions on. The project is primary source focused, encouraging students to analyze them and determine points of view. And students will craft an argument and support it with evidence. I'm coming back to History Day now to give you a bit more information. I mentioned that students can pick any topic they would like. The only constraint they have is that they must be able to tie their topic to the annual theme put forth by NHD, the national organization. Students are asked to weave the theme throughout the project, so it must be a major part of the story they're telling. Every year, the theme is intentionally broad, so it can be interpreted in a number of ways. And this year, the theme is Debate and Diplomacy in History: Successes, Failures, and Consequences. Let's explore this theme for a minute. So sometimes diplomacy will look the way you expect it to, with diplomats and ambassadors engaging in international diplomacy, like Barbara Watson here, the first Black and female Assistant Secretary of State, and later an ambassador to Malaysia. But sometimes diplomacy will look different from what we expect, like the jazz ambassadors sent to the Middle East, North Africa, and the Soviet Union during the Cold War, or the art of Jackson Pollock promoted by the US government as a representation of individualism opposed to the collectivism of communist countries. Or looking back a little further, the gift of thousands of cherry blossom trees from Japan to the US in 1912. As with diplomacy, sometimes debate will look the way we expect it to, like the televised political debates between Gore Vidal and William F. Buckley, or presidential debates. But sometimes it will look like petitions against the plan to flood the Hetch Hetchy Valley as a reservoir in the early 20th century. Or labor disputes. How did they negotiate with employers to get what they needed? A question that many students will have is, does the topic need to be about both debate and diplomacy? The answer is, it does not need to be a perfect 50-50 split between those two concepts, but the students should make an effort to find both in their story. If they find a clear story of diplomacy, they should look for debates that might have led to that diplomatic action, or debates that were sparked because of it. If they find a clear debate in history that they'd like to explore, how did diplomatic actions help resolve that debate? In the example here, we see a photo of Fidel Castro attending the exhibition baseball game between the Baltimore Orioles and the Cuban national team in Havana in 1999. The game was part of an effort to reestablish a diplomatic relationship between the US and Cuba, a plan 25 years in the making. However, the game caused controversy in the US, as you can see in the other photo, highlighting the differing viewpoints between the State Department, who argued for the symbolic significance of the game, and the fans who did not want to support Castro's rule. So here we have diplomacy sparking debate. Once your students find their topics, they'll spend at least a few weeks doing research, starting with secondary sources to get an overview of the topic, then digging into the primary sources that they will interpret. They will learn how to put together an annotated bibliography to show their work. And here I've got a list of places you might send your students to do research. School and local libraries are a great place to start with secondary sources, and many local libraries will have access to database subscriptions for sites like ABC Clio, Gale, and JSTOR available to cardholders. For primary sources, not all students will have access to physical archives, but luckily, lots of sources are digitized. We like to steer students to the online collections of places like the Library of Congress and the National Archives. Many trusted institutions will also have their own blogs written by historians that can be more accessible secondary sources for students than academic articles. One good place to start research or to start looking for a topic is the Thinkport Inquiry Kits, a resource that Maryland Humanities has developed as part of the Library of Congress's Teaching with Primary Sources program. Each inquiry kit has 5 primary sources and 1 secondary source relating to a specific event or moment in history. There are 200 kits covering U.S. history, world history, and U.S. government, and they're organized by time period within each of those collections. These kits can help kickstart research, and sources link out to the reputable sites that host them. The site also includes 12 research learning modules, which you can access at the top right column menu from any page. The research learning modules are self-guided, interactive lessons that help reinforce the skills needed at each stage of the research project process, including writing a thesis, evaluating sources for bias, and citing your sources. Another thing that will help your students at the research stage is to know what parts of the story they'll be expected to tell. History Day is a way to show students that events in history are connected. They will research and write about not just the main event, but they'll also situate it in history by setting the stage, telling us what led up to that main event, and explaining the impacts that it had in the short and long term. And these elements are also included on the NHD judging rubrics. So, as a teacher, what can you do to prepare for History Day? My first suggestion is to read about the curriculum and expectations and explore the resources that are available to you. Maryland Humanities provides teacher resources for every stage of the project, which you can find on our website or on the Padlet URL listed here. You should familiarize yourself with the official materials that NHD releases, that national organization, like the rulebook, the theme materials, and the judging rubrics that will be used in the contests. And it's also good to check out some of the sample projects created by students each year to get an idea of what the final products might look like and to give your students something to work toward. You can find samples from the Maryland State Contest on our website, mdhumanities.org, and students that made it to the national contest at nhd.org. The next important step in preparing for History Day is collaboration. If you'll have colleagues at your school doing History Day, get together to plan your school year and school showcase or contest so that students will all be on the same page. Ask your school librarian or media specialist to hold a research session to explore library holdings and online databases at your school. You could even get your ELA teacher on board to help teach the annotated bibliography. Reach out to museums and historical sites to see what research resources they have available, or even organize a field trip for students to do research on site. Finally, connect with other teachers across the state who are doing History Day. Even if you are the only one at your school doing it, or if you're new, you should never feel alone because there are teachers who have been doing this for years who are happy to help. One thing you'll want to do to plan is to create a timeline to map out the school year. Working backwards from your District History Day contest, pick dates for your school level contests and every other milestone assignment that makes up the project. Also plan for lessons to help students develop the skills they'll need. For example, a lesson on writing the annotated bibliography or what makes a good thesis statement, or a discussion about the theme to help them get ideas. You might plan History Day class time into your schedule throughout the year. For example, you can reserve every other Friday, do your History Day skills lesson, and then have time for students to ask questions or work on their projects in class. The timeline on the slide here is just an example. You might not have time or might not want to get students started on History Day in the first weeks of school. Some teachers wait until October or November to get started, so make a timeline that works with your plans and your students. You can find different and more detailed sample timelines in our teacher resources. The last step of preparation is to make sure you communicate about the process to everyone who might be involved. Make sure your school admins know what your plans are. You may need to reserve a space for your student showcase in the spring. Let students know the timeline for the project at the beginning of the year and communicate with them throughout the process. Send emails or letters home to parents to let them know that their students are taking part in a long-term project with the possibility of advancement. Let your district History Day coordinator know that you are participating because they will pass information along to you. And communicate with people in your community and get the word out about how valuable this program is. You may be able to recruit judges for a school level contest from local libraries, universities, history organizations, and colleagues in education. Another thing you can do to make the most of this History Day school year is to get in touch with Maryland History Day staff at Maryland Humanities. The outreach staff can come to your classroom and give a presentation or lesson about History Day to your students to support them wherever they are in the process. An introduction presentation can help build enthusiasm for the project early on. We can help out with how to do research or write a thesis, give feedback on student work in the later stages, or if you have another topic in mind, we are happy to talk through it. Here are a few ways that you can stay in the loop with Maryland History Day. We send out a monthly email newsletter where you can learn about upcoming workshops and deadlines, among other things. We plan to continue our monthly teacher meetings on Zoom, where we'll share resources, give tips, answer questions, and foster discussion between newer and more seasoned History Day teachers. We have started a Slack channel for History Day teachers. If you're not familiar, Slack is a workplace instant messaging app, and we plan to use it to make announcements, answer questions, and again, foster that communication between teachers across the state. And finally, you can follow Maryland History Day on Facebook or Twitter, where we highlight student work and share resources and inspiration. That's all for now. If you're watching this, I'm so glad you're interested in History Day, and our team is happy to help you in any way that we can. So feel free to email if you have any questions. Thanks for watching.